Part of normalizing relations means that we discuss our differences directly. So I'm very pleased that we've agreed to hold our next U.S. Cuba Human Rights Dialogue here in Havana later this year. And both of our countries will welcome visits by independent United Nations experts as we combat human trafficking. Which we agree is a profound violation of human rights. Even as we discuss these differences, we share a belief that we can continue to make progress in those areas that we have in common. President Castro, you said in Panama that we might disagree on something today on which we would agree tomorrow. And that's certainly been the case over the past 15 months and the days leading up to this visit. And today, I can report that we continue to move forward on many fronts when it comes to normalizing relations. We're moving ahead with more opportunities for Americans to travel to Cuba and interact with the Cuban people. Over the past year, the number of Americans coming here has surged. Last week, we gave approval for individual Americans to come here for educational travel. U.S. airlines will begin direct commercial flights this year. With last week's port security announcement, we've removed the last major hurdle to resuming cruises and ferry service. All of which will mean even more Americans visiting Cuba in the years ahead and appreciating the incredible history and culture of the Cuban people. We're moving ahead with more trade. With only 90 miles between us, we're natural trading partners. Other steps we took last week allowing the US dollar to be used more widely with Cuba. Giving Cubans more access to the dollar in international transactions. And allowing Cubans in the US to earn salaries. These things will do more to create opportunities for trade and joint ventures. We welcome Cuba's important announcement that it plans to end the 10% penalty on dollar conversions here. Which will open the door to more travel and more commerce. And these steps show that we're opening up to one another. With this visit, we've agreed to deepen our cooperation on agriculture to support our farmers and our ranchers. This afternoon, I'll highlight some of the new commercial deals being announced by major U.S. companies. And just as I continue to call on Congress to lift the trade embargo, I discussed with President Castro the steps we urge Cuba to take to show that it's ready to do more business. Which includes allowing more joint ventures and allowing foreign companies to hire Cubans directly. We're moving ahead with our efforts to help connect more Cubans to the internet and the global economy. Under President Castro, Cuba has set a goal of bringing Cubans online. And we want to help. At this afternoon's entrepreneurship event, I'll discuss additional steps we're taking to help more Cubans learn. Innovate, and do business online because in the 21st century, countries cannot be successful unless their citizens have access to the internet. We're moving ahead with more educational exchanges. Thanks to the generous support of the Cuban American community. I can announce that my 100,000 Strong in the Americas initiative will offer new opportunities for university students. To study abroad, more Americans at Cuban schools and more Cubans at U.S. schools. And going forward, educational grants and scholarships will be available to Cuban students. And in partnership with the Cuban government, we'll offer more English language training for Cuban teachers, both in Cuba and online. Even as Cubans prepare for the arrival of the Rolling Stones. We're moving ahead with more events and exchanges that bring Cubans and Americans together as well. We all look forward to tomorrow's matchup between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cuban national team. More broadly, we're moving ahead with partnerships in health, science, and the environment. Just as Cubans and American medical teams have worked together in Haiti against cholera. And in West Africa against Ebola, and I want to give a special commendation to Cuban doctors who volunteered and took on some very tough assignments to save lives in West Africa in partnership with us and other nations. We very much appreciate the work that they did. Our medical professionals will now collaborate in new areas. Preventing the spread of viruses like Zika and leading new research into cancer vaccines. Our governments will also work to protect the beautiful waters of this region that we share. And as two countries threatened by climate change, I believe we can work together to protect communities and our low-lying coasts. And we're inviting Cuba to join us and our Caribbean and Central American partners at this spring's Regional Energy Summit in Washington. And finally, we're moving ahead with our closer cooperation on regional security. We're working to deepen our law enforcement coordination. Especially against narco-traffickers that threaten both of our peoples. I want to thank President Castro and the Cuban government for hosting peace talks between the Colombian government and the FARC. And we remain optimistic that Colombians can achieve a lasting and just peace. And although we did not have an extensive discussion of Venezuela, we did touch on the subject. And I believe that the whole region has an interest in a country that is addressing its economic challenges. Is responsive to the aspirations of its people, and is a source of stability in the region. That is, I believe, an interest that we should all share. So again, President Castro, I want to thank you for welcoming me. I think it's fair to say that the United States and Cuba are now engaged across more areas than any time during my lifetime. With every passing day, more Americans are coming to Cuba. More U.S. businesses and schools and faith groups are working to forge new partnerships with the Cuban people. More Cubans are benefiting from the opportunities that this travel and trade bring. As you indicated, the road ahead will not be easy. Fortunately, we don't have to swim with sharks in order to achieve the goals that you and I have set forth. As you say here in Cuba, echar para adelante. Despite the difficulties, we will continue to move forward. We're focused on the future. And I'm absolutely confident that if we stay on this course, we can deliver a better and brighter future for both the Cuban people and the American people. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Q&A begins. First question, Jim Acosta. Question, as interpreted. Thank you, President Castro, for your hospitality in Havana. And thank you, Mr. President. In English. In your meeting with President Castro. What words did you use to urge him to pursue democratic reforms and expand human rights here in Cuba? Will you invite President Castro to the White House? We know. He's been to New York. And why did you not meet with Fidel Castro? And, President Castro, my father is Cuban. He left for the United States when he was young. Do you see a new and democratic direction for your country? And why you have Cuban political prisoners? And why don't you release them? And one more question. Who do you prefer, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Thank you. President Obama, well, as I think we both indicated. We had a very fruitful conversation around issues of democracy and human rights. Our starting point is that we have two different systems of government. two different economies. And we have decades of profound differences, both bilaterally and internationally. What I have said to President Castro is that we are moving forward and not looking backwards. That we don't view Cuba as a threat to the United States. I hope that my visit here indicates the degree to which we're setting a new chapter in Cuban-American relations. But as is true with countries around the world where we have normalized relations, we will continue to stand up for basic principles that we believe in. America believes in democracy. We believe that freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion are not just American values, but are universal values. They may not express themselves exactly in the same way in every country. They may not be enshrined in the founding documents or constitutions of every country the same way. Or protected legally in exactly the same ways, but the human impulse towards freedom, the freedom that Jose Marti talked about, we think is a universal longing. President Castro, I think, has pointed out that, in his view, making sure that everybody is getting a decent education or health care, has basic security in old age, that those things are human rights, as well. I personally would not disagree with him. But it doesn't detract from some of these other concerns. And the goal of the human rights dialogue is not for the United States to dictate to Cuba how they should govern themselves, but to make sure that we are having a frank and candid conversation around this issue, and hopefully that we can learn from each other.